Hello again, and welcome back to my channel on finding your path to your best emotional and physical health. As always, if you like what you hear, please hit subscribe so you can get notified of when new videos come out with new content about all the tips you can do to kind of help heal and grow throughout your lifetime. Also, please download my 5 free videos on your tips to finding your best emotional and physical health, get you started on your way on your personal journey. So with that, I'd like to get into today's topic. We want to continue with our kind of series on complex PTSD and interrelational trauma that starts in childhood. And we had been talking about the different trauma types and how they respond to things. And understanding your trauma type is one part of it, but managing the emotional flashbacks so that they don't interfere as much in your relationship is really important. I should say relationships, because it could mean relationships at work, it could mean relationships at home, it could be all kinds of things. So understanding and recognizing when you're in an emotional flashback and managing that is going to be really, really important. So today I just wanted to talk about 10 ways that you can manage an emotional flashback. And then in another video, we're going to kind of get into kind of recognizing them, because sometimes that can be a challenge. So an emotional flashback is one that is really going to dominate your experience with fear, shame, and depression. So you might kind of recognize those emotions right off the bat when you're in one. And we'll get into, like I said, in another video about a little bit more detail about what those might look like before you get really good at recognizing them. So the very first tip you have to do is, of course, identifying when you're in one, because if you can't manage it if you don't know you're in it. And sometimes that's the challenge, is recognizing that you're being in it and reminding yourself, this is an emotional flashback, or this is the past, this is not now. And I'm having a memory that's triggered, and you don't necessarily have a specific like thought memory, but more of a body memory. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is to remind yourself that you're no longer a child, and that you are safe, and you are no longer, you might feel afraid, but you are no longer in danger. Okay, because people that have grown up with childhood trauma and really have struggled with that are going to be triggered back into that time frame. Okay. Number three is remembering that you have boundaries, and you can set them and you can honor them. And by using your voice and expressing what you need to the person or whoever's kind of helping trigger that emotional flashback. Number four, remember that it will pass. In the moment, people get really frightened. They think this is going to be like it is forever, because that's kind of what they thought as children. Once you get a little bit older, you can be like, this is temporary, I'm going to be out of this situation, and the emotion will kind of resolve itself. So we have to kind of see that and figure out, okay, it will pass. This too shall pass is one of the mantras that sometimes people will learn. This too shall pass, because it will, and you'll be on to the next thing. But that doesn't mean you should ignore it, because you want to gain the skills so that you can not have as many of them, because that's the ultimate goal, and to feel better about that. So anyway, keep those in mind. So number five, remember that you're now an adult and you have more skills and abilities. Because as a kid, you didn't have the skills and abilities to manage that or do that or deal with the emotions that were coming up, but you do now, because you're an adult and you've grown up and you've learned things. So you have to kind of remind yourself you are an adult now and you have additional skills that you can draw on. Number six is going to be learning to feel your body, or ease into your body and identify where are you feeling this. You have to be able to relax a little bit and take a deep breath, because then you can start to assess where you're carrying that tension, because that might tell you something about your trauma. Okay, and to take a kind of a deep breath and stimulate that vagus nerve so you can kind of relax a little bit and kind of get a little bit less reactive. Okay. So you kind of settle into your body, ground yourself to the earth if you can, and kind of feel who you are and be a little bit more attached to that as opposed to what's happening in the moment. Number seven is kind of resist the catastrophic thinking. So one of the skills we teach when we're kind of working through some of these trauma things is some basic cognitive behavioral techniques of just changing the thinking around these things. So once you recognize you're in a trigger and you recognize that, you're thinking things like, I'm always going to be this way. It will never change. The world's dangerous. Those kind of thoughts. Once you catch them, you can challenge them. Is this actually true? Are there times when it's not true? And then you realize, yeah, there probably are. Okay. So then once you start recognizing that in the moment, then you will help encourage yourself to relax a little bit and change those negative thought patterns. Number 8 is going to be to allow grieving and grieving your past hurts. So a lot of the times people will come into session in an emotional flashback and they will kind of process that, and you just challenge that ultimate resistance to change and get them to as therapists, we get them to kind of realize that they are no longer that person, that they have gone through this transformation and they are emerging out as a different person. And then they are going to really shake their reality once they've accepted what has gone on or what they did not get as a kid that they can get now. And then they can just kind of release that and grieve and cry and do whatever they need to do to get better. So don't be afraid to do that and to release all of those negative emotions, because a lot of people, and I've known lots of people that kind of hold on to that negative emotion and don't allow themselves to grieve it. And I have seen them do that for years. It just happens in a lot of people. Or they grieve it and they don't really move completely through it. So when you have someone that has like maybe a trauma with a parent, they kind of get stuck in that negative emotion, and they may try to repair that stuff with that parent, but they never grieve what they didn't have as a kid. And then they get stuck in anxiety and negativity. Okay. So, and that's especially true if you have a parent that you've lost that has done some stuff to you, and whether they intended to or not, because a lot of times parents just don't know the difference, and then they get stuck in that negative emotions, and especially and men are especially programmed to not grieve those kinds of things, and they need to as much as women do. Number 9 is to kind of cultivate good relationships and support. We have a lot of ability to do that, okay? So while sometimes when you've had childhood trauma, it's hard to pick the right people because some people will appear supportive, but they're not. Then they kind of get stuck in that, who do I trust and who can help me, right? So that's real important to kind of figure out, okay, who can I trust, who feels safe, and kind of cultivate that. That's why a therapist is good. You can almost always trust your therapist. Your therapist is going to keep you safe. They are sometimes one of the best relationships you can start with when you don't know how to do this, because the relationship with a client and a therapist is very structured. Either a therapist or a coach, somebody like that. It's very structured, and it has all these limitations so that they aren't going to get embroiled in all these other emotions and triggers and things like that, like you do in your family and friend relationships sometimes. And number 10, identify the triggers that lead to flashbacks. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in more detail in a later video, because this takes some practice, because there's lots of different ways that triggers can show up, and we sometimes don't even realize what's going on. And my last little bit of advice is be patient in the recovery process. You can't expect yourself to become 100% better, in a short period of time. This may take 6 months. This may take a year. It may go in stages. You may do a little 6 months here, take a break, do a little 6 months later, and do the next level of transformation. That works too. So be patient in the recovery process. And lifetime healing is that. It's lifetime healing. You will always be learning and growing and be a better person every day. So with that, please let me know if there's anything else I can do. Leave comments, questions, whatever that you need. And also, I would love to have you connect on the website. If you're looking for some personal coaching around this kind of stuff, we can certainly hook you up and kind of get that started for you. So if you, again, connect with me and let me know if there's anything you need. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.